So what ended up happening in that game? 60-59.
Yeah. So
Assumption up by 1.
So we're losing, and I'm thinking, oh boy, we're going to lose, and you know, I'm going to fall out. It's my fault.
Yeah.
That we're going to lose. I'm just really soaking that in, but somehow we come back and we're down by 1, and the clock's running out. There's a jump ball. I think everybody in the gym at this point thought, you know, Assumption, it was over.
Yeah.
Assumption was getting ready to celebrate. I think there was only a couple seconds left on the clock. There's a jump ball. Mm-hmm. The story goes that Ron Purdy is a guy that's doing the tip on the jump ball.
Yeah.
And the story goes that John Lucas whispers to him, "Tip it to me." But the coach had given Ron different instructions in terms of who to tip the ball to.
Right.
But the story...
He probably wanted to go to Andy or something because he was hot.
Right. But the story behind the scene is that John Lucas says, "Tip it to me."
Yeah.
Ron wins the tip. John Lucas gets the ball. The jump ball is at half court. Mm-hmm. So really all Assumption has to do is secure the jump ball, or we win the jump ball, and we just got to launch a desperation shot. Sure enough, John launches a desperation shot there, and everybody, the Assumption players and fans are getting ready to celebrate, and everybody's watching the shot, and it's like slow motion. Everybody's watching this shot, and there's this chill in the air because all of a sudden everybody's thinking this ball might go in. You're looking at the shot, and it's like the ball goes in, swish.
Exactly.
And the buzzer goes.
Herman wins.
Herman wins.
Welcome to the Plant-Based Wellness Forum podcast called Planting a Seed. I'm your host, Steve Gavrilos, and today's topic is about basketball and life. And I have a very special guest to have this conversation with. But first, let me give you a bit of history. Back in the 70s and 80s, Windsor was known as a hotbed of basketball talent, with many players receiving scholarships to play college basketball in the USA. I would say that the most well-known basketball player to come out of Windsor was Mike Berkovich, who led his WD-Low Trojans to back-to-back WISA and OFSA championships, and then got a full-ride scholarship to Michigan State University. At MSU, he was a starting guard in the 1979 NCAA championship team, playing alongside Irvin Magic Johnson, who together with their Spartan team beat Larry Bird and his Indiana State team in the most-watched NCAA championship game in history. But no, our special guest today is not Mike Berkovich. Today, our special guest is a man who had a parallel career to Mike in basketball. After 40 years, however, some in Windsor may not remember him, and many others have probably never heard of him. Why? Well, because back in the day, there was no personal video cameras or cell phones like there are today to capture those special moment-in-time memories that keep history alive longer than the local newspaper or word of mouth. Let me tell you what happened. In 1979, there was what you might call a perfect storm that created this amazing time in Windsor basketball history. A perfect storm that blew this then 18-year-old basketball phenom down the 401 from Toronto to Windsor, where he and everyone who witnessed it were drenched with 2 magical years of basketball glory that hoop dreams are made of. But then, just as fast as that perfect storm of 1979 started, 2 years later, he was carried away again by those almighty winds into another dimension of reality, to a place far away from Windsor, where he was virtually never heard of or seen again. So today I'm very excited to be able to welcome a Windsor basketball legend for you to enjoy seeing again or to meet for the first time. In 1980 and 1981, he led his Herman Green Griffin basketball teams to back-to-back WISA and OFSA championships, forever cementing his legendary status in Windsor, before starting another fantastic voyage on a full-ride scholarship to St. Bonaventure in New York. I'm super thrilled to take you back in time to 1979 for today's podcast called The Perfect Storm, the untold story of number 40, Rob Samuels. Hi, Rob. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Steve.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
How was your drive down 401 today?
How was my drive down? I would say it uneventful.
Uneventful. Smooth sailing.
I set my cruise control and the GPS, and before I knew it, I was here.
Did it bring back any old memories from the first time you drove down the 401 to Windsor?
Actually, no, it didn't.
Well, that's anticlimactic.
Because I'll tell you why. Because the first time I drove down here, I was not driving myself. I was a passenger. So
Right.
It was very, very different back in 1979 when I first drove to Windsor. In fact, at that time, it was the first time I ever went to Windsor, so I had no idea where I was going. I had no idea where Windsor was or what it looked like. So it's a very, very different trip this time.
For sure.
Versus the first time.
Yeah, well, you're living in the moment. You're living in the present. That's
Right.
good. You know what? Before we get into the podcast, I have to give you an official introduction.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I am.
Are you ready to rumble?
I am.
Starting at power forward for the Herman Green Griffins, wearing white and green, number 40, Rob Samuels. Yay! There you go. See?
I like that. I like the
introduction.
Yeah.
Hey, before we get started, also, I want to list some of your basketball accolades and accomplishments. Officer champion in 1980 and 81. You were named Windsor's Athlete of the Year in 1981. You've had numerous tournament championships throughout Ontario, including the prestigious University of Windsor tournament. You were selected to the provincial basketball team and represented Ontario at the Canada Summer Games in 1981 and 80. You're a member of the Canadian national basketball team from 1982 to 1988. You got a full-ride scholarship to NCAA Division I St. Bonaventure University in New York. You were selected to the all-rookie team in the Atlantic 10 Conference at St. Bonaventure in 1982. You were selected to the all-conference team in the Atlantic 10 Conference in 1985. In 1985, you led St. Bonaventure in scoring. You represented Canada at the World Championship Games in Mexico City, and you also had tournaments in Cuba, Brazil, Amsterdam, and England. You also played 1 year of professional basketball in Belfast, Ireland. Recently, you were selected as one of the top 12 basketball players in the history of Windsor-Essex County. Did I miss anything?
Wow. I'm just in awe of what I've heard so far.
What a resume.
Yes.
But you know, accolades and accomplishments don't give us a whole story of Mr. Rob Samuels, the person, and where you came from, what you did after leaving Windsor, and what you're doing now in your life. That's why I believe it's so important for people to hear your untold story, Rob. A magical story, not only about basketball, but more importantly about life. And I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you. Just like life and basketball are intertwined sometimes, I think it's best that we break up the untold story of your life into 4 parts, into 4 quarters, just like a basketball game. So, Rob, are you ready to start the game about your life for all our viewers to see?
Before I start, Steve, I just want to say I'm humbled by what you've shared so far. And I really want to thank you for just inviting me to be here and to tell my untold story. And also, our friendship. I want to just acknowledge that you and I have been friends since high school, and we go back over 40 years. And just want to let everybody out there know that this is not just business, but we're also really good friends, and I've really appreciated the friendship that we've had from teenagers. We met as teenagers, and now we're fathers, and me a grandfather. So we've been on the journey for a long time, and I just want to really thank you for just continuing our friendship this way.
Thank you for saying that, Rob. I feel exactly the same way. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here today. I think it's so important, like I said, to give your untold story to the people. So that's what we're going to do today. But let's break it up into 20-year quarters, which I understand you like to view the stages of life as. Because I think you said to me the normal average age lifespan is about mid-80s. So we'll break it up into 20, 40, 60, and 80, and hope for overtime. First, let's tip off the first quarter of your life by going back to your beginnings, to your roots. Where were you born? Where did you grow up, and how did you ultimately end up in Windsor? Let's talk about everything before you took that drive to Windsor for the first time 44 years ago.
Wow. Okay, so I need to go back now. So I was born in Montego Bay, Jamaica. I know that many people may know that as a vacation destination. It's really a paradise. My parents were teenagers when I was conceived. My mother was 19, my dad was 19, and neither of them really were ready to have a child at that stage in their lives, but that's when I was conceived. And I spent the first 11 years of my life in Montego Bay. Part of that 11 years was spent growing up with my grandparents because my mother, I think around age 5 or 6, my mother decided that she wanted to leave the island and explore and go to, she went to the US and then to Canada. And so part of my life while she was gone was growing up with my grandparents. And that was really a really very, very significant part of my upbringing. Maybe we'll touch on that a little bit more later on. But at age 11, my mother ended up in Canada, in Toronto. And at that time, I rejoined her, leaving Jamaica at age 11 to move to Toronto. I ended up in Toronto in December of 1972. It was, I can tell you the first thing I remember when I arrived in Toronto was it was cold.
Yeah, December for sure, yeah.
So leaving my tropical paradise and arriving in Toronto in December was a shocking experience, needless to say. And little did I know that great things were, awaited me in Toronto. Upon arrival in Toronto, we lived downtown Toronto in a mostly Italian neighborhood. So I started, the first foreign language I was exposed to was Italian. Later learned a little bit of Spanish and French, but learned a little bit of Italian from my neighbors and friends I went to school with. About 3 years after arriving in Canada, I was introduced to this sport called basketball. we laugh about it.
You never heard of it while you were in Jamaica?
I'd never heard of basketball when I was in Jamaica.
No,
When I was in Jamaica, we played cricket.
Oh, okay.
We played soccer. Soccer is known as football.
Yeah.
So some of the countries refer to soccer as football. So those were the first two sports I played, cricket and soccer. And of course, track and field was very big in Jamaica. I lived in a very rural community at the time with my grandparents, so we didn't have access to running tracks or any opportunities to be involved in track and field. But cricket and soccer was easy. You just get a ball and kick it around. And with cricket, you just set up the wickets and you get a bat, you make a bat. And so it was easy to play those two sports. Basketball was introduced to me when I was in junior high school. I remember going into gym class, and the gym teacher was instructing everyone what to do. And he noticed that I didn't have a clue what I was doing. so I'd never forget, he said, there was a boy in my class, my gym class, named Philip. I never forgot his name, Philip Sparrell. Philip looked like a scientist. He had these
horn rim glasses.
And he had long hair.
Yeah.
And he said, Philip, show Samuels how to shoot a layup. And that was my first memory of being exposed to basketball.
That's amazing.
Didn't have a clue. And Philip, I don't know where Philip is today, but he probably has no idea that he was the guy that sort of started, me on this basketball route. So that was my first beginnings of it being exposed to basketball. I don't know how or why, but I just developed a real passion for the sport. I remember from gym class onward, I remember spending my lunch hours playing basketball. They had these rims set up. Every lunch hour was spent at this rim, and there were kids playing there all the time. I remember most of the kids that were playing were Filipino kids, were from Philippines.
Really?
And what I remember is they were all very fast and short. And but I also watched and I learned a lot from them. They were very passionate about the sport. Much of my first basketball experience is playing with kids who were from the Philippines who were short and fast.
Yeah, I never knew that.
And that was my first memory of playing outdoor basketball in the schoolyard. Fast forward, I ended up playing on the junior high school team, and my passion for the sport continued to grow. I went to summer camps, and it really developed very quickly. I mean, it was, by the time I got to grade 11, grade 12, I was already being recruited by universities for scholarship. So within a matter of 7 years of playing the sport, I became quite, I wouldn't say proficient at it, I would say I became skilled at it, and had really good athletic ability. Maybe from my days of playing soccer and cricket, I had some athletic ability that was transferable. I was fast, I had good vertical jump, I had good coordination, I had the physical makeup for it.
Yeah.
So I already had some natural gifts that transferred well to the sport. I think that really helped my early development. And I also was very passionate. And I think you understand this. Basically lived and breathed basketball before school, and at lunch hour and after school was basketball. So really developed very quickly. The people I hang around with, the friends I had, they became all basketball, what you call basketball junkies.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
That was a term you described us one time. I still remember that.
Basketball junkies.
Yeah, basketball junkies.
Yes. So my high school years in Toronto was at Northview Heights Secondary. I went to Willowdale Junior High in Toronto. And at Northview Heights was where my basketball really took off. I had a great coach, Mr. Jaworski. He was also a gym teacher, Dick Jaworski. I remember him really being the first coach that really poured into me and saw my ability and tried to, give me as much as he could in terms of development. I remember him sending me to a leadership camp during the summer for further development, not just as a basketball player, but also development as a person in terms of leadership skills. So while I was away at the leadership camp, please jump in, by the way.
No.
I'm probably going to miss,
I want you to tell your story, then I got a couple questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
I may miss things, but I'm sort of condensing things very quickly. So I believe it was grade 11. At the end of grade 11, then during the summer, I went to this leadership camp, which my coach sent me to. When I came back from the leadership camp, my mother told me that we were going to move, and we were moving to a place called Windsor. And like, Windsor, I've never heard of Windsor. Toronto was all I knew. So that fall, September, I think it was the end of August of 1979, we ended up moving to Windsor. We came down the 401, and it was like a flash. I don't really remember a whole lot about the trip, but I just remember it was a long drive, and we ended up in Windsor, Ontario, where I knew no one. I knew nothing about the city. So it was really an interesting beginning. I had no idea where I was going, what awaited me. But as you know, we'll talk a little more further about this. That little did I know what awaited me was something amazing, just an amazing experience. So all along, that's been kind of the theme of my life, is that I often end up in places that I have no idea what awaits me, but it's always something amazing.
Right.
And so I live that way now with great anticipation.
That's awesome. Thank you, Rob, for that. One thing is I like the guests to finish their explanation of what they're talking about instead of interrupting. I find that when I watch some podcasts, the host is constantly interrupting them. So I think that's the way I'd like to do it. But before I start asking you some questions, I want to set the rules of the game. We can call timeout if you need to go take a break.
Okay.
We can call out of bounds.
Okay.
So if I ask you something that's you don't want to answer, just say that's out of bounds.
Okay.
If I foul you or if you foul me, if there's a technical, just say it, because life and basketball, as I said earlier, are intermixed. When you play any sport, as you've said many, many times, it teaches you a lot about life. So anyways, I just wanted to set those kind of rules at the beginning. So here's my questions. You mentioned you grew up in a tropical paradise in Jamaica, in Montego Bay.
Yes.
You said you had your mom who left. Explain to me, how old were you when she left again?
I was around 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly.
Okay. And how many years was she gone?
She was gone for about four or 5 years.
Okay. How about the rest of your family members?
Well, at this time, I had a younger brother, and my younger brother and I ended up living with my grandparents.
In Jamaica?
Yes.
Okay.
My grandparents lived in a very rural community. They had 9 children. My grandparents were great, tremendous role models for me.
Your grandparents?
Yes.
Had 9 children?
Yes. My mother's parents, they had 9 children.
Okay.
My mother was one of 9.
Okay.
So when we went to live with them, they were still children. Some of their children were still at home. I do remember my 2 uncles and an aunt were still at home, and the other children were on their own. So I had role models, even though my mom was not present, and my dad was not present either. I had my uncles and my grandparents as surrogate parents, and they were just great parents, great role models from what I remember. And it was that situation of being raised by the extended family, which It's not as common today, I guess, in North America. But when I was growing up in the islands in Jamaica, being raised by extended family was very, very common, where you live with your grandparents or you live with your aunts and uncles. And so my aunt was very, very involved. I had an aunt who was my mother's younger sister, who was very, very involved in her upbringing. My uncles were there as, to give discipline and direction. So I had a good, environment, good support system.
Sounds like a great support system.
To grow up in. And it was in a rural community.
Yeah.
There was not a lot of distractions. My grandfather did farming. He had goats and cows and chickens. I guess you could say I was somewhat like a farm boy during that time. I was basically growing up in a very rural community. No street lights, well water. We had our own crops. We had mangoes hanging off the tree out back.
That's why you like mangoes so much.
I love mangoes now, that's why, yes. So it was really a unique experience, a very wholesome experience growing up as a child in a rural community in Jamaica.
Well, I think you remember we have a similar upbringing, because when I was born in Greece, same thing. I lived in a rural setting. We had the chickens, the cows, the donkeys, all that stuff. And, you just feel so connected to life then, I think, right?
Yes, and everyone, the neighbors, everyone knew each other.
Yes.
I remember the neighbors across the street, the neighbors down the street. Everywhere you went and you walked, people knew you. They knew who you were. And that, looking back, that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
You didn't feel isolated. You didn't feel, unknown. You felt connected to us. There was a sense of community there.
That's huge.
Sense of belonging. Unlike today, many people may live in a community and not know anyone there. So that was kind of a cool way to grow up. I thought it was really neat from my memories.
Connected this to community. You didn't feel isolated.
Yeah.
Because you said today a lot of people are isolated, even though there's so many people around.
Yes.
So that sounds very, very nice. And then you came to Toronto. Any championships in grade 9, grade 10? You went there till grade 11, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Toronto until grade 11. What I remember in terms of, you talk about championships, my high school was not one of the bigger high schools in Toronto. It was Northview Heights Secondary. We were in the suburbs. At that time, the city schools, the schools in the inner city, Oakwood Collegiate, for example, were kind of the marquee schools. So I was sort of on the outside looking in, so to speak.
I see.
But what I remember is playing rep basketball, what's known as rep basketball today. And I played on a team called the Harriet Tubman team in the city of Toronto. And we used to go to various tournaments throughout the city. And I remember that being a really positive experience, where we won a lot of games, a lot of championships. We had an amazing coach, a gentleman named Courtney Betty, who's a lawyer today in Toronto. He's now a friend of mine. He really was instrumental in terms of leadership and developing young kids, young men around the city of Toronto. So I had great exposure that way from playing in rep basketball in Toronto.
So you know what? Let's start talking about your trip down to Herman now.
Okay, yes.
Before you do that, I'd like you to watch this short little video. So did that help you rekindle some memories in your mind?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. As I said earlier, moving to Windsor, to the unknown, I had no idea what awaited me here. But when I watched that video, so many memories come back and so many things come back to say what an amazing experience it was, what an amazing place to be. Someone told me recently that sometimes your destiny meets you. Sometimes your destiny finds you. You don't find it. I think coming to Windsor was very much like that.
It's magical. It's so magical.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think all of us have a destiny. And we live with anticipation, knowing that there's something amazing on the horizon for us. And we may not know how or when we're going to arrive at that place. But when I look at that video, the experience seemed so natural. It didn't seem, it felt like I belonged here. It felt like it was meant to be. There was such an easy transition to that whole experience that it just affirmed to me that this was my destiny.
Well, let's talk about a couple of those stories. As people viewed the video, they saw you in the officer championship, and you had two amazing dunks. We can, of course, talk about the players that were on our team and mention their names. But you know, the first video was where Ron stole the ball. Ron Purdy, his nickname was the Snake, and somehow he stole the ball and knocked it loose, and then you came and got it and slam dunk. And the second video, you can describe the second slam dunk. You can describe that one.
Well, the second slam dunk was actually a designed play. It was a play that we ran and practiced. It may have looked very simple, but we had actually practiced that for many weeks, months in practice. And our coach borrowed that play or stole that play from the Michigan State Spartans team that had Magic Johnson and Greg Kelser. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, you're saying it right. He's the announcer still for the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah.
Him and George Blaha.
They had
all these years.
They had a play like that where they'd set a backdoor screen. Greg would go around the screen and Magic would just toss it up, and Greg would throw it down. That was, I mean, it looked a lot easier when Greg did it and Magic, but we stole that play and we executed it at a high school level.
It was amazing.
To perfection.
When I was, watching it from the side, I just couldn't believe. Like, none of us sitting on the side could believe what just happened. You had an amazing back pick from Dan Pfister, and then you had the lob, the alley-oop from Ron Purdy, and then that was it. And after that, I mean, the game was pretty well sealed. So that was your second championship, our second championship. The first one was different. So we should name the characters on the starting lineup of your second championship, since we started there first. We mentioned Ron Purdy, Gavin McDougall, yourself, Mario Faccisato, great small forward, and Big Mo Sofan, right?
Yes.
But let's go back to the first championship when you just got to Windsor and you started alluding to some of those things. Who did you meet here in Windsor first?
So when I arrived in Windsor, like all basketball players, whenever you arrive in a new city, and I've always been this way whenever I go to a new place I'm visiting, and I'm going to be there for some time.
Yeah.
You find out, where do they play basketball here, right? Where's the pickup game?
Yeah.
Where's the game?
Where's the boys?
Where do they hang out here?
Yeah.
And so if there's a YMCA, you always start there because everybody plays at the YMCA. So I remember visiting the local YMCA here in Windsor, and when I walked into the gym, the first person I met was Ron Purdy. He was the first person I was I ran into. And I remember one of the things that first question he asked me was, well, where are you going to go to school? I said, I don't know.
I just got here.
I just got here, yeah. I'm not thinking about school. I'm just
came here to shoot some baskets.
I'm just here to shoot some hoops. Yeah. But to make a long story short, the discussion ended up like this: like, you really should go to Herman, he says. I told him where I lived, and there was actually a high school just down the street. Brennan High School was just down. I don't know if I should have mentioned that. But
no, you should mention. We're just talking openly here. Was it Brennan that? Because when I met you, you lived on Niagara and Langlois. You were close to W.D. Lowe.
Yes.
So where did you live first?
The first place I lived was Pilette.
Oh, okay, that's right. So yeah,
Wyandotte.
Brennan was down the street. That's right.
Brennan was like literally
Okay.
blocks away.
I got
couple
to see
blocks.
now. Okay, go on. Yeah.
Yeah. So I told him where I live. He said, no, you don't want to go there. I had no idea why.
Yeah.
But I think he had connections to Herman. He had friends, and
Well, wasn't he going to Herman at that time?
I think at the time he may have dropped out. He may have just been in transition. But I know
he went to Low. Sorry to interrupt. I know he went to Low originally for the first couple years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't know. You don't know where he was at that time?
I think from what I recall, the conversation we've had over the years, he had gone to Low, but he had left Low. And I think he had gone to Herman and had dropped out.
Oh, okay.
So, but he was familiar with Herman.
Yeah.
He knew people there. And I think he was contemplating going back to school.
Okay.
So he says, you got to go to Herman. I think maybe in his own mind at that time, he had decided that
He wants to go.
he wants to go back.
Back, yeah.
And if he goes back, then, we should be together at
Yeah.
that school. So-
Yeah, of course. It was meant to happen.
Right.
I mean, were you guys the only guys in the gym, or was there other people?
There were other people there.
Okay, but you guys just connected right away.
And he and I have this conversation all the time. I don't think it was just coincidence. Again, I think it was a moment of destiny.
Yeah.
I think I was meant to meet Ron, and Ron directed me to Herman. I didn't know that at the time, but it was
Right.
all, we're calling this podcast a perfect storm.
Yeah.
But everything was lining up, and Ron was just a part of that process. Life, as you know it, Steve, is a lot of life is about the people you meet on your journey. And everyone you meet directs you in some way. Maybe it's something they say, or maybe it's some advice they give, but everyone that you meet along your path of life does something to impact your life. Some have tremendous impact, and some maybe the impact is small, but it's all a part of the puzzle. And Ron was a piece. As I look back, he was a piece of that puzzle directing me towards my destiny.
That's a great way to describe it.
Yeah,
So now that you're going to Herman,
yeah.
tell me about your first year there. How did it go, first of all, with basketball? Tell me about basketball that first year. What happened? How was the season?
I remember going to a team, ending up on a team that really had great players. My team my high school team back in Toronto was an average team, but I remember the Herman team, first team I played on in Windsor, was just a great team. I remember we had guys like Andy Kiss, 6'4" guard. We had
He was a prototype. I mean, there wasn't too many 6'4" guards that could dunk two balls, during halftime.
Yeah,
Hey?
yeah, a big man, big guard.
Yeah.
Of course, Ron was on the team. He was a big guard as well at 6'3".
Yeah.
Scott Penny, John Lucas, big guys. John was 6'5", 6'6", playing center. It was a big team, big and talented team.
Yeah.
And so
Well, those guys were football players. Scott
football
and John
players
Lucas
too.
were football.
yes, tough guys. So I just remember this team being very big and
Yeah.
talented, and I was just a part of what was.
So did you feel like you fit in right away?
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't intimidate you or anything? Like Big Luke didn't intimidate you?
No, I wasn't intimidated. No, I think maybe coming from a big city like Toronto, coming to a smaller town.
Yeah.
I sort of came with sort of a big city mentality.
Oh, okay.
And so I wasn't really intimidated.
And these guys are blue collar guys. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure their dads, like my dad too. They all worked at probably one of the factories, Chrysler's or whatever.
Yeah.
So they see the kid coming from Toronto, from the flash, from the lights in Toronto.
Yeah. I just remember fitting in. It was a seamless
awesome.
transition.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Everyone really received me with open arms.
Yeah.
There weren't any issues of me trying to prove myself. I think my love for the game, my ability, I was skilled, and my passion for the game showed right away. And I was welcome because I think everybody's realized that, hey, this is a guy that can help us, and we can help each other.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's how we saw it.
For sure.
And we just really came together very quickly and everybody was optimistic about the future of this team. And so we all bought in immediately because I think deep down inside we knew that we were going to go places. We were going to do some damage, some things. And so I think everybody bought into that common purpose.
Yeah. Well, in the previous years, Herman was always close, but they never got over that hump. As you know, our coach, Chris McCaffrey and Bud Leonard. So I think that you were obviously the missing piece, right?
The missing link.
The missing link that came in, and then things just, elevated so much. So tell me about the season. Like, tell me what you remember about, maybe some preseason games, because I remember one specific preseason game, which we can talk about after, and then Christmas tournament, and going all the way to the end of the season. What are your favorite memories? And
Well, what I do remember is that we won a lot.
Yeah.
We didn't lose very many games. I think that year we only lost 3 games, maybe 3 games out of maybe 30 or so games that we played. I remember most of the tournaments we went to. We won the tournaments we went to. There were tournaments like the Silver Fox in Hamilton.
another prestigious one.
There's another tournament up in St. Marie, in the University of Windsor tournament. We were city champions that year. To win the city championship in Windsor is a big deal. It's an accomplishment. We ended up winning the Southwest Regional, and then on to the provincial championships where we won, or we could say you cleaned up. So that year was just really a year about winning. There was a lot of winning. I think we lost maybe 1 or 2 games or 3 games along the way. One game we lost was to Oakwood, Toronto Oakwood. Toronto Oakwood was a team that I remember when I lived in Toronto. They were the powerhouse team in the GTA, the Toronto area, and so we lost to them. But eventually we ended up beating them in the provincial championships.
What players?
I think we lost to a team called Sarnia Central as well. I'm not sure.
That's the one that I think was either a preseason or mid-season game. Sarnia Central. Did you guys lose to them? I can't remember. I was at that game.
I can't remember. I'm thinking we may have lost to them, but. They had a guy on the team, a big 7-foot...
John Antonides,
who was heading to Michigan,
right.
University of Michigan on a scholarship. That was kind of a highlight game for me because it was the first time I played against a guy who was that big and, of that caliber.
Was he 7 foot what?
I think he was 7'1", like...
He was a tall
just
guy.
a big man.
Yeah.
And certainly a talented... I'm not sure what happened to him career-wise, but that was a bit of a highlight, just being able to play against someone of that caliber. Just a great year. I just remember it being just a storybook year of winning a lot of games and winning a lot of championships. It was a great feeling.
That's a great way to describe it, a storybook. Going back to that Sarnia Central game, like that game had a lot of hype. And I remember myself and one of my close friends from Walkerville, Gus Spanik, we were there watching. You were battling big time with John Antonides. Like, it was a great game. The rafters, the stands were full. I think their coach was named Johnny Orr, if I'm not mistaken. I think that he was also looking at you to go to Michigan, right? Because you guys had a great team. You weren't just one player, but from what we understood, he was looking at you to see, if you could go. Did anything happen with that at all? Did anybody from Michigan, did he approach you or?
No, I never did have any type of contact or conversation with anybody from University of Michigan, no.
So that must have been the rumor going around. But it was a fantastic game that I remember. And I remember when I saw you, I said, I had this kind of connection with you, even though I didn't know you. I just felt like, I could tell your spirit. I don't know, I just had this connection. I felt something, for you, let's say. I went to Walkerville at that time. I was in grade 12. After that, you guys, like you said, you kept winning. But the Worcester Championship game, we need to talk about that, and I want to see how much you remember of that Worcester Championship game with the shot that shocked the world.
We've had many conversations about this game, and this particular game was a defining moment in the history of Herman High School basketball, because my understanding is Herman had never won city championship. They've already come close,
right?
And so here we are in it's 1980, and we're in the city championship against W.D. Lowe.
Sorry, that was Assumption.
Assumption, yes.
Assumption,
okay,
yeah.
sorry. Lowe's the next year.
Yeah, Lowe's the next year.
Okay, so I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's
here.
okay. That's okay.
Yeah, so we're playing against Assumption. I was having the worst game of my career, my high school basketball career. I ended up falling out very early in the fourth quarter.
Okay.
Sitting on the bench, and my team is losing now.
I think they were down by 12 with several minutes to go.
Yeah, our team came back, battled back.
How did they come back?
You know what? I don't remember. I was just on the bench, just in sadness because I just felt disappointed that I'd let the team down. That I wasn't able to stay in the game.
what I remember, because again, I was there with, some of my friends from Walkerville, Gus Spanik, probably Dan Demovsky, and maybe Dave Thorman, my close friends from Walkerville. We were sitting basically at half court, about halfway up the stands. And what we witnessed those last couple minutes was just amazing. I remember Andy Kiss coming down and hitting probably 4 or 5 3-pointers, although there was no 3-point line at the time. Mm-hmm. And, some other plays here and there. You guys got caught up. You were down by one point. I think it was 60-59. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And that's right. I didn't remember where you were. And so now you're telling me that you had fouled out a few minutes before.
Yeah, I'd fouled out very early in the fourth quarter. There was a lot of time left on the clock when I fouled out.
And you felt like you let your team down.
Yeah.
Why did you feel like that?
Because I wanted to be in the game, and I wanted to be on the floor when we won to help us win.
Yeah.
And I just felt like, just being out of the game, our teams had less of a chance to win, and that I wasn't helping our team by being on the bench. So I felt really disappointed with myself. And
So what ended up happening in that game? 60-59.
Yeah. So
Assumption up by 1.
So we're losing, and I'm thinking, oh boy, we're going to lose, and I'm going to foul out. It's my fault.
Yeah.
That we're going to lose. I'm just really soaking that in, but somehow we come back and we're down by 1, and the clock's running out. There's a jump ball. I think everybody in the gym at this point thought, Assumption, it was over.
Yeah.
Assumption was getting ready to celebrate. I think there was only a couple seconds left on the clock. There's a jump ball. Mm-hmm. The story goes that Ron Purdy is a guy that's doing the tip on the jump ball.
Yeah.
And the story goes that John Lucas whispers to him, "Tip it to me." But the coach had given Ron different instructions in terms of who to tip the ball to.
Right.
But the story...
He probably wanted to go to Andy or something because he was hot.
Right. But the story behind the scene is that John Lucas says, "Tip it to me."
Yeah.
Ron wins the tip. John Lucas gets the ball. The jump ball is at half court. Mm-hmm. So really all Assumption has to do is secure the jump ball, or we win the jump ball, and we just got to launch a desperation shot. Sure enough, John launches a desperation shot there, and everybody, the Assumption players and fans are getting ready to celebrate, and everybody's watching the shot, and it's like slow motion. Everybody's watching this shot, and there's this chill in the air because all of a sudden everybody's thinking this ball might go in. You're looking at the shot, and it's like the ball goes in, swish.
Exactly.
And the buzzer goes.
Herman wins.
Herman wins.
I remember the Assumption fans, before the shot was launched, they all stood up ready to run the floor.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, the ball just basically froze in the air, like, as if time froze.
Yeah.
And like I said, I had a good vantage point seeing it, and I'm sure you did too.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it looked like it went through the rafters. I thought it went through the rafters, and I said, oh, it's going to hit these rafters.
Yeah.
But it didn't. And swished, just like you said, and that was it. Pandemonium took over.
Yes. I couldn't believe it. I was in disbelief. I thought, did that just happen?
Yeah.
That just happened? That was my first thought.
Like this morning, I know you were driving, and I went to Forest Glade to shoot some baskets, right? And I said, oh, let me try this on the other side of half. Like, I tried 13 shots. I couldn't even get close, right? Not that I expected it, but you know what I mean? It's like a far distance.
It's a difficult shot.
Especially with 2 seconds left to go. So it's unbelievable.
It's a difficult shot from half court.
Yeah.
Just being in an empty gym.
Exactly.
Never mind being in a gym that's sold out with a screaming crowd, and there's pressure on you to make the shot within 2 seconds.
Like, that was fate that he put that shot in. Yeah. That was not, I know that they said he practiced it sometimes at halftime. He was a strong guy. Yeah. God rest his soul. Mm-hmm. He passed away. But he was a strong guy, and obviously it was easier for him than somebody else. But still, it's like pure fate. Mm. And, and just to paint the picture on the other side, the Assumption people, do you remember who you guys played against, the starting 5? I'll give you a hint. Four names start with a B, and one starts with last name starts with a B, and the other one starts with an H.
Okay, let me see. I remember Rob Baisuto because he was a big center.
Yeah, there's one B.
6'6", big guy, nice guy. He was a friend of mine. I remember a Guy Bonifero. I think he was a high jumper. That was what he was known for.
Now, he's the guy that jumped with Ron at half, and he was expected to win because he's a high jumper.
Right.
And sure enough, the snake ended up stealing the tip.
Yeah, the tip.
Yeah.
So I remember a guy, Ren Dosant. I think he was part of the starting lineup. Those were the only three guys I could remember from today.
What I remember, and actually I looked at some information before, but I remember this anyways. It was Biasudo, Binder, Bonifero, and Vince Burgess.
Oh, yes. I remember
and the
him.
last guy was Hunt Hool.
And that was a great team.
It was a great team.
That was a great team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys ended up winning it. History was made. It was an unbelievable finish. Mm-hmm. So tell me, what happened after? Like, how did you feel after? You felt like you let your team down before the win. Then all of a sudden, you must have had so much elation. Like, what happened? Tell me.
Again, I was in disbelief when I saw that shot go in and that we won. I think the word that comes to my mind today is redemption. I felt good. I didn't let the team down.
Okay.
We were able to pull it off. We were still alive because now we get a chance to go to the regional championships in London. I don't know. There was something about that game that created a belief in our team that it was like that wall we were trying to get over of winning the city championship was down.
Yeah.
That wall we broke through that wall, and now we had this belief that the sky's the limit. And we went to the Western, what they call the Southwestern Regionals in London, and just destroyed everyone.
Smoked everybody.
Yeah. And we went on to this provincial championships. In the U.S., they call it the state championship. And really, destroyed everyone there too. We went to the finals against Toronto Oakwood, who we had lost to earlier during the year. We led that game from start to finish. I think we ended up winning by 12, so it wasn't a close game. And that was our first provincial championship. So really, the city championship in Windsor really was very instrumental. It just sort of gave us a belief and a confidence that we could win any game, even no matter how much we were down, no matter how impossible it seemed. So it gave us a belief that really opened up the door to.
There was no stopping you anymore.
Yeah.
There was no stopping you.
The confidence that created was amazing. Not just on the basketball court, but I think from that game we also learned that you never give up. We were down a lot of points, and you learn not to give up. There's always a chance. And I think that is something that was imprinted on all of us from that day forward, that you never ever give up. You always believe that you can win even when you're down.
And that's a beautiful lesson to carry throughout life.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a beautiful first year. Let's talk about the second year. Just to say something about that, that's the year that I met you, because you and Ron were at the Y, and I would go to the Y too often. As a matter of fact, before that, I would go to the Y Sunday mornings. I skipped out of church sometimes, right? And I would go to the Y, and I'd see you there, but we didn't know each other, so I was intimidated to talk to you, right? Obviously. And you didn't talk to me there because you were focusing on what you had to do. But one time, you guys were playing in the Y, and I came in, and Ron just started talking to me. And he said, where do you go, this and that. I said, I'm in grade 12, I go to Walkerville. He goes, where do you live? He says, I live out in Forest Glade. He says, why don't you come to Herman? And I'm like, wait a minute. Ron and Rob is asking me to come to Herman. I'm like, let me think about this. I'll get back to you guys. Long story short there, I ended up eventually going to Herman because I wanted to play basketball. I was going to say because I lived closer, but that wasn't the reason. I wanted to play basketball with you guys. And a couple weeks after that, my schoolmate and teammate at Walkerville, Mo Sofan, called me up and said, Steve, what are you doing? He says, I'm going to come to Herman too. So then he ended up coming as well. And of course, he had a very good career at Herman. And myself, I was, kind of a little bit, quite a bit disappointed in what I was able to do. But, I was really super happy to be part of that amazing run, amazing, glorious team, and amazing championship. But more than anything, I think I'm super happy that, you and I are friends all these years, as you mentioned earlier. Because for me, what I got out of Herman was not, the basketball taught you lessons, whether you win or lose. But I think the thing that stays forever is those relationships that you build. So thank you as well again for being a great friend to me. But going back to that second year that you were there, tell me what happened.
I like what you said, Steve, how you skipped out on church to play basketball. Because I skipped out on church many times. And I want you to know, Steve, God will forgive you for missing church to play basketball. I think he's okay with that. But second year, Steve, again, just a real storybook year, because we had some players who graduated. John Lucas and Scott Penny, they graduated. Those were three of the starting lineup players that graduated. And so,
And you got a scholarship to Central Michigan.
yeah, Andy went on to Central
Yeah.
Michigan, so that's an indication of how good a player he was.
Yeah.
So when those guys left, we realized that was a big loss. But we had a great coach in Chris McCaffrey and Bob Leonard, great coaches, and coached us well, and they instructed us well. I remember them, talking to us about us taking on greater responsibility. And during that summer, I remember specifically working on my ball handling skills because I knew that I'd have to take on some of the responsibility of handling the basketball because now Andy, our basketball handler, was gone. So we realized that we had to play a bigger role because we've lost some players.
Yeah.
And so it caused us as players to mature. We continued playing really well in spite of the players that we've lost. And of course, we had the addition of Mo Sufan and yourself. I don't know if anybody else joined the team.
And there was Len Rochelo. He came from Brennan.
Yeah, we had three
new guys.
Yeah, three new guys, Mo, yourself, and Len. Great additions to our team. And so I thought even though we lost some guys, we had some great additions. And then the guys that were part of the first championship team really matured. And so all of that gave us still a very, very good basketball team. And so we continued to win. Again, I don't remember us losing very many games. It was a different type of team. But I think that the biggest difference was because we were so successful that year before, we carried that mindset, that belief into the future. And that's what's so important about confidence. Sometimes it's not about your talent, but it's about your belief. And sometimes
It's huge, huge.
your belief transcends your talent. If you have great belief, you can perform way beyond your talent. You might have great talent and not have any belief and self-confidence, and you underperform. But I think that confidence that we developed from winning that first championship, winning the city championship, really just continued on. And our coaches really built on that. And at this point, everyone that we were playing against knew who we were. There was no surprise. They knew, hey, these guys are good. And it was more difficult also when we played because everybody played their best game against us. But again, we won. We ended up winning, going to the city championship. Most of the tournaments I remember we played in, we won all the tournaments we played in. We won the city championship in Windsor. This city championship was against Lowell.
That's right.
Not a close game. We dominated that game. We didn't have to need a buzzer beater shot for that one. We won the regionals easily, and we went to the provincial championships again in Hamilton. The final game was tough. It was against a Windsor team.
Yeah.
WD Lowell again. We had to play them a third time. It's the third time playing them.
That's right.
And we ended up winning that game by 2. So back-to-back provincial championships. Just a great second year. Different players, different type of team, but same results. We were successful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you and Ron were fantastic leaders. Like you had the confidence, like you said, going in to that second season. So we just rode your coattails basically. Everybody did what they could, and also Mario Faccisato was another important cog coming up from the previous year, and then of course Gavin. And Big Mo, I think that was the starting 5. We also had the other guys on the team. I mentioned Dan Pfister, Len. We had also Joe Korenik. A bunch of us guys were, I think, good practice players too, because you guys, Big Mo went against Big Joe, so that was a great competition there. Who else was on the team? Just to mention everybody: Joe Korenik, Mike Loverick, Ed Manello. Pierre Moyse. I think Pierre went head-to-head with you a lot of times. And
Was Mario Faccisato part? He was on both teams.
Yeah, he was on both. Yeah, he was on both. So, I hope I didn't forget anybody.
I think they'll forgive us. We are forgetting Mark Crosby. I remember Mark Crosby.
He was on the first team.
He was on the first team.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're talking about the second team. But yeah, it's hard to remember everyone.
Yeah.
40 plus years later, I'm sure if we forget anyone, they'll forgive us. What I want to say, though, is that you mentioned the word team, everyone on that team, both teams were significant. Obviously, some players played a lot and some didn't, hardly played. But there were practices where everybody was needed. There were games where everyone got to play. But overall, everyone made up the chemistry. I think that's just important. When a team wins, it's not because of one person or the coach, but it's because of everybody who did their role. And everyone had a different role. Some people had a big piece and some people had a small piece.
Yeah.
I remember when we had a reunion recently, the equipment manager talked about his role and how important that role was. And sometimes we forget. The trainer, Daryl Dunn, who would bring us towels and water.
And oranges.
And oranges.
Yeah.
Keep us hydrated and nourished. Very significant role. So everybody's role is important. So it's just, I just wanted to acknowledge that it wasn't just about the stars that scored the points, but it's about everybody playing their part and playing their role. And without any one person, the team would be different.
Very, very well said and well spoken from the leader of the team. You were the captain. You and Ron were the captains, and that's what made me feel good. Even several years ago when we were talking, and I felt a little bit disappointed. I had lost some confidence, a lot of confidence during that year, and that's exactly what you told me. What you just said now, and it really helped me to understand that it is everyone from number 1 to 12 that's important, right? So that's a beautiful way to look at things. So that's awesome. So that's the second year, 2 offset championships in a row. Other than basketball, what else were you involved with at Herman? Anything else?
Those 2 years at Herman were so filled and so quick that, you asked a great question, what else was I involved in? Earlier we mentioned that as basketball players, we were basketball junkies. So what I remember is coming into school, into the building before school classes started.
Yeah.
And I was in the gym working out. I was getting a sweat before school started. So I'd come in, work out before school, get changed, have a shower, and go to class. And then after school, we'd have practice. So my day was filled, between practice, games, classes, studying. There was not a lot of time left. I was recently scrolling through my high school yearbook, looking at all the extracurricular activities. When you're playing basketball and you're so involved, you don't realize there's a lot going on in the school besides classes and your sport.
Yeah.
Some of the guys on the team played football, so they played 2 sports. I never played 2 sports from grade 11 onward. This might surprise you. I don't know if it would or not, but when I was looking through my yearbook, I was looking through the clubs. I was a member of the Christian Living Club. And I started thinking about that. You probably wonder, why would a guy who's so involved in basketball wanted to be in a Christian Living Club? Right. But I grew up in a family, a Christian home, a Christian family. My grandparents took us to church when I was a child. So I was very early, I was exposed to faith, to God, to the reality that there's something bigger than me. And so from the time I was a child, Steve, I always had a curiosity and an interest in spiritual things. And when I heard about the Christian Living Club at the high school, it made me curious. I wanted to go and I wanted to hear what was going on. I wanted to hear them talk about things beyond school and basketball, things in the spiritual realm. And so I went there out of curiosity, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot spiritually, and I grew spiritually from the other students that were in that group. That was, as an athlete, I was taking care of my physical part of me. As a student, I was taking care of the mental aspect of me, but I also wanted to take care of the spiritual part of me. And so that's probably the biggest reason I was part of that group.
See, you knew the secret back then to how to feel whole and feel healthy. Playing basketball, going to school, the spirituality component is so important. So that's amazing that you were doing that. Was there a lot of kids in that club?
Yeah, it was a fairly big group.
Yeah.
I think there was 15 to 20 kids there.
Okay, that is a big group, yeah.
And there were a couple of teachers that taught and facilitated conversation. So it's a very neat, unique space to be in, because I do believe that, I think we're going to have more conversation about this later, but I think sometimes we neglect parts of us. We're not just physical beings, but we're also emotional, spiritual, psychological, relational. We talk about our relationship as friends. So sometimes we neglect parts of us. The spiritual part of us sometimes gets neglected, or we don't know what to do with it. So I think it's important to be in a posture of curiosity and exploration. And I've always had that curiosity and a desire to grow spiritually. And I saw the Christian Living Club in the high school as a space where I could mature and learn, and I was open to that.
Well, I remember when we'd go into the tournaments, I think we went to the 6 tournaments, you had the Bible with you. And many times, because I was, also a quiet guy, I'd sit next to you and you'd show me the Bible and we kind of look through there and, it was very, very nice, So here's the end of that, your grade 13 year. You're ready to go to university. How did it end up that you got the scholarship? Tell me about that.
Well, my last year of high school,
You're recruited?
I was recruited. I was really blessed to first of all, to be a part of the team I was on, Herman High School basketball team for 2 years. What that created was, there was a lot of attention from university scouts who came to watch games. And obviously, they would come to watch the top teams play.
Yeah.
We were the #1 ranked team in the province of Ontario those 2 years. So obviously, scouts wanted to look at us. The first provincial championship that we won, by the way, when we played Toronto Oakwood in the finals in Ottawa at Carleton University, my understanding that I learned later on was scouts had attended that game, that tournament, to watch Norm Clark play. Norm was one of the best players in the province at the time. St. Bonaventure University had come to watch him play. While they were there, obviously our team was dominating their team. And the scouts from St. Bonaventure said, well, who are those guys? Who is that guy? So I was fortunate in that I was in the right place at the right time. And because of the profile of our team and the success of our team, that meant recruiters came to watch us play. By the time I was at the end of my high school years, a number of schools were interested in me attending the university. I was allowed to take 3 visits to visit different schools. The first visit I took was to Central Michigan University. I remember also visiting University of Detroit. And I had letters from several other schools, Marquette University, University of Santa Clara, that were interested. But I wanted to attend a school that was close to home, and St. Bonaventure was the most interested. The coaches from St. Bonaventure came to our final game in Hamilton, our second year, and they expressed the most interest. And when I visited the campus in New York, I really felt a peace about the school. It was in the mountains, Olean, New York, just a beautiful place. The school was run by the Franciscan Fathers, a very serene, I just really felt at peace when I visited that school, the location of it. Norman Clark was at the school at the time, who I knew, and so he was able to tell me what his experience was like. It was a Division I school, but at the same time, it was small, private school, and there's only a few thousand, 4,000 students there.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't a large school, but even though it was a big time program, so just the intimacy of the school really attracted me, and so that's where I ended up accepting a scholarship, 4-year university scholarship to attend St. Bonaventure.
Excellent. Well, that's the end of the first quarter, Rob.
The first quarter is over. All right.
We'll come back to the second quarter after this break.
Okay.
All right?
All right. Sounds good.
Roberto, how you doing?
Good. Steve.
Hey, how you doing, Rob?
Good to see you again. Yeah, good to see you.
Thanks for coming down.
Welcome.
Let's take a couple photos first.
Couple photos?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Tracy, how you doing? Guys,
How you doing?
This is my friend Rob Samuels,
Robert?
John, and Tracy.
Hang on 1 second. But I get you guys to step back a little bit. It's too close to the lights.
Yeah,
That's right.
he's too tall.
Well, step back would be behind.
No.
No, just one step back.
Okay.
It's mostly Steve. He's blown out.
And then, here, one with the ball. You gotta have a picture of the ball. Yeah, I even brought a ball.
Do I try advertise for Nike too?
That one, And the last thing you gotta do is, who's your favorite Jamaican athlete? There you go. Take this one.
Okay, hang on.
You know who that is, right?
I'm forgetting the name of it.
Hussein.
Bolt.
Yes.
That's the one. Alrighty. Yeah, we'll advertise for Nike. Why not?
How did you know I was going to say Hussein?
I just know you.
Okay.
I knew, as soon as I said that, I knew he was gonna get into that bullshit.
It's in Jamaica, I'm going for the bobsled team.
The bobsled team.